Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the New Media Show. My name is Todd Cochran. Of course, I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Rob Greenlee. We're back in the studio, Rob.
Yes. Oh, my goodness. Has it been almost 2 months?
It has been 2 months.
Yeah, I was looking at my Skype, and the last time I called you on this Skype line was 2 months ago.
Yeah, so I was thinking about it last night, and I was like, I got to back this camera off a little bit. I'm zoomed way in on my head. I think I got the wrong one set up. There we go. Let's try this. Oh, come on. Now, am I moving the wrong? Anyway, I'll have to. There's an easier way to fix this. Put the chair down. Actually, we're pretty lucky that the studio actually even works.
Time and dust, right?
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and there's definitely dust. So I just had to laugh. Now let me hit something here. So anyway, so we're back. And unfortunately, because of PodFest, it's like 1 week in the studio, then I'm leaving next Friday to go to Florida for meetings, and then you're going afterwards. How long are you're going to go to Europe, or where are you headed afterwards?
Yeah, I'm off to Spain. I'm off to Spain after PodFest, right?
Oh.
I mean, like I'm flying out of Orlando going to Spain.
Oh my goodness.
That tells you anything. So yeah, so we're going to be out of the pocket for a couple weeks here again.
Yeah, but we are going to do a live show, I guess, at PodFest, right?
Right, correct.
Yeah.
So I'm planning on streaming that live on Spreaker if I can pull it off.
Yeah, that should be fun. So gonna have a few guests, I guess, as well for that, right?
Yep. And Mr. James Cridlin is going to join us, and if I can drag a few other folks, I guess I'm going to have up to 5 microphones on stage. So
nice.
So we can get a few people together for that, and it's at the same time we do this show.
Oh, perfect. So, it may only be audio, folks. I think that's the key here, but we'll have a cast of thousands. So again, let's just review. So those of you that are not going to be at PodFest, that will be on Saturday I
think it's the 9th.
The 9th, yeah. Saturday the 9th. At the same time, same bad channel, at newmediashow.com/live. So you'll be able to catch the show, or it'll be on Spreaker Live too. So that'll work. Fantastic. It's not that we have anything to talk about, Rob. It's
well, I mean, we have been doing shows. It's just they've been audio only, so it isn't like we're that far behind. But
so go ahead. So those of you,
there's always stuff going on.
Yeah, those of you that missed us, if you think we've been gone, you better be subscribed, because you missed a whole bunch of stuff on the audio side, because we've been doing audio shows. So make sure you're subscribed there.
Yep.
So I tell you, this week has been an interesting week. It really, really has, for me anyway. I flew home on Saturday, was home 24 hours, left for Australia on Sunday, was down there in Sydney for 2 full days, like 50 hours on the ground, 22 hours of flying time. I got back on Wednesday morning, and then I've been in catch-up mode all week. So my head has been down, just pounding the keyboard, to be quite frank with you. And with everything going on in the space, everyone wants to talk. It's crazy. Is your phone ringing off the hook?
Oh, it's the emails and it's the Skype calls, and it's just lots of stuff going on.
Yeah, and
it's a hot space.
Reporters calling, asking questions. Why is this? Why is that? And there was an interesting thing that was noticed by Ed over at the Podcast Business Journal. He noticed on Podtrack's most recent report that they did not put in downloads or listens in their report.
So is that because I'm looking at it right now for January 2019, and I see, I don't see downloads, but I do see U.S. unique monthly audience. I don't know if that's the same thing or not. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Down below. Yeah. I don't see downloads, but I see audience. I'm not quite sure if they're translating that to be audience.
I don't know how,
or downloads.
they're using their own secret sauce to come up with audience, but he was asking why. Why is that? Why did they change the report? Is it because of the IAB certification or what's going on? And I may have a hint on why, but I'm not going to say why.
Well, I mean, it's all dependent on these content publishers having an active prefix,
right?
That's put against their media file links.
Well,
for some reason that prefix isn't working correctly or something, it can take down the counts.
Or maybe they're learning something as they're going through their certification process, potentially.
There you go. Yeah, we're going through the probe as well, right?
Yeah. So, by the way, how's your probe going? How was your guys's?
It's getting intense. So I'm not really following it that closely, but it's.
Do you have a timeline? Do you even know how close they are? Or?
No,
wow.
I don't. My guess is, we're probably maybe a little over halfway through it, I think.
Oh, see, it is quite intense, isn't it?
Yes. Well, it causes you to make adjustments.
Right.
That you hadn't planned on.
Oh, wow. Better not say that too loud. Yeah.
Well, I don't think that they're any too significant.
Yeah.
It's just more how data is passed around in the back end.
We didn't have to make any changes, but I tell you one thing that we will, our redirect customers are, we've really looked at that really, really close, and comparing and contrasting, and there is missing data in the redirect stuff, and the log file data definitely gets you a little bit further down the road. And we've known that for many, many years, but that's how we started the whole thing was the redirect. I think overall I'm pretty pleased where we're at. Podcasters are never happy with their numbers, but
yeah. Well, one other change that has been, and I don't know where you guys are on this path, but Spotify is now a pass-through platform for us.
Oh, so you guys did turn it on.
Right.
Yeah, we haven't turned it on yet. We've had bigger fish to fry. I hate to say it, but how's that going?
It's going fine. It's just a matter of turning off the stats API coming back from them.
Oh, no, you shouldn't turn that off. You should do some A/B comparison and look at that.
I'm pretty sure that they've done that.
Okay, good.
Saying that's now been turned off.
So how is that? What are you seeing? What are you seeing in numbers? Are you seeing? Can you say?
Well, I mean, it's still a little early to draw too much conclusion to it, but Spotify is taking a big chunk of data.
Wow.
It's a little bit more than we thought.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. There's an interesting disclosure, folks. So Spotify's taking a little more than you expected.
Right.
Wow.
So, but I think it's indicative of what's happening over there. They also don't yet have all of our podcasts. So,
that's true.
Yeah,
for us too.
So we shall see on all that how it works out. But they appear to be making some significant inroads. I'd say it's the strongest, second place play in the podcasting space since Zune. Actually,
I don't think it's 8.5 though. Rob Walsh was saying they were seeing up to 8.5. I'm hesitant to go with that type of number, but
though I would say that it depends on the makeup of your content too.
Probably the show, right?
Right. I mean, I think Spotify has a very specific kind of user demographic, and I think that can be mapped to certain shows as strengths. Like this show, I would think doesn't do very well on Spotify.
Yeah, I would think not.
But. So, in the Spreaker Live show, I don't think does very well on Spotify, but a comedy show or a show that's like a storytelling podcast or something like that would probably do pretty well over there.
And want to say hello to Rick and Eileen in the chat room. There's some other folks that are being hiding out. Please say hello if you're watching live. Make sure you say hello in the chat. So, I think though that the big question or the big surprise, we had been given some more information about the acquisition, and I know we talked this to death already, but the number continues to go up on the Anchor, and right up around $100 million or more.
Right.
That's
I've heard some say 175. I've heard some say 125. I mean, it's all over the map.
120,
right.
123 is the number that keeps popping in my inbox.
Right.
So
somewhere between 100 and 125, I think, is probably fairly accurate. Yeah, that seems like a lot, though.
They got took to the cleaners, Rob. if they paid $125 million for that,
I know. Yeah.
They got took. In my opinion, Spotify. Wow, you guys. Wow. Hey, okay. It's 50 was already big, but if it was truly 125 or 123, that was one heck of a marketing deck. It truly was. And you know what, but then, okay, I'm not going to begrudge them. Congratulations. But, they're not going to make no money on that.
Yeah.
So
I think it's a much bigger play than podcasting. And I've been saying that for a while. I think Spotify has ambitions to get, a market built around their platform that's similar to some of their competitors,
right?
Like a Netflix or HBO or some of those folks. I mean, I think that they want to have a subscription engine that has a lot of value packed into it.
Yeah.
And, and Amazon has that with their Prime program. So, I mean, I think that they want to get involved in that market more. And they saw what was happening with Gimlet as almost like a Hollywood studio.
But what's interesting is, and I didn't realize this, Rob said that only 18 of the Gimlet shows put out new episodes in 2018. And when Rob said that, I was like, whoa, what? How is that possible that they only had 18 shows that put out new episodes? So that surprised me. It really did. Hey, Greg, in the chat room, thanks for joining us. Hey, we're going to be looking at each other. We're right across from each other at Podfest.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But this,
yeah.
So
yeah, I'm in booth 309.
So yeah, you're close. Then we can throw ping pong balls at each other. So
I'll have to bring my Nerf gun with me.
I think we're in the podcast hosting alley, is what we are. That's the whole. Everyone's kind of congregated together. But I heard those booths are only 8 feet wide. Did you hear that?
No, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, Mackenzie said it was 10 by 8. I said, well, I hope the 8 is the depth.
Right.
So we're taking both banners just in case. Okay, we get an 8-foot banner and 10-foot banner. So we'll. So if someone knows if it's actually 10 feet wide, that would probably be good for all of us to know. We can show up with 10-foot wide booths. But the schedule is out for Podfest, and
yeah, but did they put it on their website? Or
no, they just posted on their Facebook page and a tentative schedule. And it's on her. I'm trying to plan meetings and stuff, and the speaking schedule is still kind of like hanging. And only 30 minutes, Rob. We only get 30 minutes.
But there's 20 minutes on each side of it.
Why? Why is there 20 minutes on each side of a session?
I guess, I don't know, for people to mingle and go between sessions. I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of.
And I'm looking at my deck and I'm like, delete. I'm having to delete slides because there's no way. It's unheard of 30 minutes for a presentation at a convention. 40's the norm.
Right.
So to be cut 10 minutes and then try to take questions in the same amount of time.
Well, I think that we're just going to have to take 40, Todd. Because there's 20 minutes between the end of actually at the end of our panel.
There's nobody.
There's nothing happening. So I think we could go
longer,
an hour if we wanted.
Yeah, but I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to fit what I've got to say in 30 minutes. It's going to be like right as soon as the top of the hour, I'm going to have to start. There's going to be no way that I cannot. You usually give people 2 or 3 minutes to get in the room.
Right.
There's going to be no way. That That's 6 or 7 slides.
If you're gonna dilly dally, you're gonna miss stuff when it comes
Right.
to your presentation.
Yeah, I've got a lot to get through. So, and I hate talking fast because then you miss stuff, you know?
Yeah.
But I'm going to do a practice run through probably Tuesday and just time myself and see where I'm at. But it's tough. Yeah. Anyway, I jumped this over completely to a different topic. I'm sorry. But
It's okay. Was it on March 6th is when Tom Webster is coming out with the new Share of Ear presentation. And that's going to be when we're at PodFest. So.
Oh, it is going to be popping right then, isn't it?
Right. So that's coming up. I was talking to Tom yesterday a little bit, and he may join me on the Spreaker Live show next week. So we'll see on that if it's going to happen. But he's not going to talk about that research yet.
Yeah.
He's saving it for the big reveal. But that's going to be bubbling up. There's some new research coming out of, and leading into 2019.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll see a big jump in audience and content and all sorts of stuff that's going to come out of that.
Well, just kind of, we talked about it a little bit on the previous shows, but our meetings in New York have it's been very interesting. And we're on like round 3 with some people, and there's a lot of concern on the client side. And here's what I'm hearing. If you are not on a certified system, money is going to start drying up from orders, from insertion orders.
Yeah, I've been hearing that for a couple months now. They've been like, wanting to only work with certified platforms.
Yeah. And so, I know everyone's going through there's a bunch of people going through the process, and people are getting a little bit of a pass because they're in work, but there's a whole bunch of players out there that are not. Right. And if the insertion order actually says you shall use a certified podcast metric system, then that is really going to, going to cause some panic in the space. But I think that it's, from everyone we're talking to and the conversations we're having, I would not be surprised to start seeing that coming down on insertion orders. So time will tell.
Yeah, I would think we'd probably be mostly fully cut over, I would think, by the end of the year. I would think.
Yeah, but there's how many players out there that won't be.
Right.
And that could, I don't know. It'll be interesting to watch what happens here. But there's more happening, in the space. The more we talk to people, we're at a point where things have to go a little bit beyond the metrics, and some attribution type of information needs to be collected as well. So it's going to be, I think there's big change coming to podcast advertising. We're really, at least internally, and we're super, super focused on the data, and I'm throttling back, and we're actually looking for, starting to look for someone that can sell our inventory. I want to move that to a third party completely by the end of the year, and it's just one of those things that you do what you're best at, right? And and we're definitely going to be looking at making some changes there. But it's definitely an interesting time because what happens is what we're seeing is that there's a lot of people that are the executors of advertising deals, and they are also the measurement people of the deals. And for example, Podtrac tried to split their thing. They have 2 companies now, but it's really the same team. In principle, yeah, maybe you got one person that's, so if those two items are in house, it's a little bit of a challenge, and people are becoming more aware of it. So that doesn't happen in digital. In any of the other stuff, there's always separate measurement groups from those that execute the advertising campaigns. So as a space matures, I wouldn't be surprised to see that become a requirement too.
Right. Yeah, I did see an article in Digiday talking about the 5 things we learned at the Winter Podcast Upfronts article that came out, and it was it had some comments in here. I mean, the article was really focused on, I guess, on February 20th. There was it's called the Winter Podcast Upfronts down in Beverly Hills, and with the UTA group. It's basically a talent agency down in Beverly Hills.
Didn't even know that was going on.
Yeah, well, it's really focused on kind of like comedians and Hollywood celebrities, that kind of stuff that are involved in podcasting. But one of the comments in here in the article that I thought was really interesting is it made this comment about how everyone has a podcast now, but a lot of the ad buyers are struggling to navigate all the available podcasts to find the ones that they want to buy. Right. And there's like these top 10 lists of shows that are out there, but as we both know, some of those top 200 lists, whatever, don't really mean anything.
They don't mean nothing.
Right. And so, I think that's probably an interesting question that I hadn't thought about was, how do these ad buyers identify shows? Now, granted, they're probably fairly dependent on the ad sellers, right, to be pitching them shows, right? So that's pretty much how they find shows, but it sounds like they have a need or desire to find shows on their own.
Well, there's not enough inventory, and yet there's enough inventory. And the inventory that's out there, they want to cherry pick. Right.
And they want to buy into single shows and things like that, which I think the industry needs to move towards bundle buying. Yeah, I know you've been doing that for years. I know, but I think these ad buyers have been too focused on buying into individual shows based on specific talent,
right?
And buying into demographics, and this is where the data comes back to, right?
Yeah.
We need to be able to provide them with data to help them reach their target audience across larger numbers of shows. And I feel like I'm preaching the same thing we've been saying for the last 10 years, but it appears to be still an issue.
It is an issue, and it's because the buyers are having a hard time getting and this is part of my battle, is that making them understand it's real simple. If you can just like take and put all the presentations away and say to a person, all right, you're going to buy 10 shows. You're going to get 4 spots a month. So that's 40 spots. Okay, you're going to get 40 ad spots. It's going to cost you this much money. But if you have 100 shows that's giving you 4 spots a month, it's 400 spots, and it's going to cost you this amount of money. And usually it could be, the money could almost be the same, and yet you get 400 exposures instead of 40. And when they start thinking about that, and it's just like any other advertising space, the repetition is important.
Probably more than ever.
Right.
People's attentions are split. I think in the early days, what was the average impression before customer action on any kind of marketing or advertising?
Like 4 to 5 or something. Yeah.
Right, exactly. I thought it was like maybe 5 to 6.
Yeah.
But now I've heard that it's as high as 14.
Well, and if
that people have to hear something before they remember it.
Right. And if you think about the digital world we live in, we're getting hammered, with ads. And then you've got shows now. Some of the big shows, they're running 2 pre-rolls, 3 mid-rolls, 2 post-rolls. They're running 7 ads in a 45-minute program.
Right.
And I'm just like, really? So, the shows that are getting a lot of inventory. But, at some point, if the space is going to grow, these buyers are going to, and this is what, some of my job has been, is to make these buyers say, listen, you've got thousands of shows that are, and some of them, let's be frank, it's we have to be careful here because, the podcaster is, if you're an individual podcaster and you have 1,000 people that are downloading your show, or 1,000 downloads, do you want advertising at 1,000 downloads at a $25 CPM and you're going to make $25 an episode? Yeah, maybe if you're doing that's $100 a month. That's dinner, that's a nice dinner out in most cities. And then, or pays for your hosting and pays for, maybe some an app or whatever whatever your expenses are. But if you have 100 listeners, 100 downloads, no, it doesn't make any sense. And you're working for...
No, it does. No, it actually makes sense, Todd. But if you know what I mean, it makes pennies.
Touche. Touche. Yes, it makes pennies. So, anyone that's listening to this show knows this, but we have this whole new class of content creators. And, and that's a whole line of discussion I want to talk about too. But so Rob's trying to make the point. You're trying to make the point. I'm trying to make the point. We're going into these forums and we're saying, listen, hold up. Do you want to work for 7 cents an hour?
Well, there's kind of two ways of looking at it, Todd. So, I think you have to start somewhere. One point, and then there is a factor of conditioning your audience to be accepting of endorsements as well.
Okay,
right?
But you can do that when you have 100 listeners. How did I do that? Hey, folks, I'm just telling you straight up. The main goal of this show is I am looking for an advertiser.
Right.
That's what I did in 2004. When I started my show.
Right.
And
it's okay if it comes from my audience.
And my wife, my wife had put the thumb on me and said, "This thing's got to make money in 2 years."
Right.
Right. So I understand, but at the same point, expectations are, and then you have people out there saying, "Well, you can make $300 an episode with 100 people." Yeah, if you're reaching a very niche.
Yeah, you're selling the show, not the audience.
Right. Yeah. And then I heard someone say, "Hey, I want to have someone invest in my show and be a backer," and those are all great things. But in the end, and I'm going to be, you come to my session in Podfest, this is what I'm going to be talking about. In the end, the advertiser's got to make money.
Right.
And you want them to come back and renew. So I'm just, so there's thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of shows that have 1,000+ listeners per episode. There's just tens of thousands of them.
Oh yeah.
And if we could monetize all those would be great. But do we want 5 ads, 7 ads at them? No, I think you want 1, maybe 2 in most shows.
That's where getting CPMs up higher is the only way it's going to work.
Well, CPMs aren't going to go up much higher. We've already set the baselines. We have to fight to hold the CPM line.
But is it a creative challenge? I think that's somewhat the questions that are being asked. I know I did an episode this week on the Spreaker Live show with Francesco from Voxnest, and that's what we were talking about, is how that dynamic ad insertion has got a little bit of a black eye out there because it's been linked up with programmatic.
Sure.
And programmatic's been linked up with radio ads.
Yeah.
And so you get this daisy chain of negativity about that.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the technology is not the problem, right? It's the creative is the problem.
Yeah.
So, if the creative is more conducive to podcasting, then the technology becomes an asset. But what's happening right now, it's being thought of as the opposite, right? People aren't thinking about the creative as much. They're just saying, well, the creative is bad, so the technology must be bad.
Well, oftentimes the creative is bad because again, this is stuff I'm going to be talking about at PodFest, is that the creative is bad because the podcaster's lazy. And
the brands, it's the brand advertisers.
Well, okay, the brand advertisers, they don't know any better.
I know, but that's the key, is they need to realize that podcasts are a different listening experience than radio.
So that's where our job is as content creators. If we're getting that deal, we need to look at that copy that they provide and say, okay, how can I juice this up? What
we're talking about host reads. I agree with you. I think that's what I'm talking about, is that any advertising that goes into the podcasting space needs to be more done like a host read. It doesn't have to be done by the host, but it needs to be produced like a live read. And we need to be concerned about how we match talent, voiceover talent, to produce those that match the cadence and the environment of the show itself. And I know this is a little bit of a challenge, and I know a lot of people are really kind of concerned about how do we scale more authentic reads into podcasts across larger numbers of shows.
Well, there's definitely a business model there for someone that can do that well.
Right. And I think that's the future of this medium.
But there's companies in the in the space that do that. They're creative agencies. That's all they do is create the ads.
Right.
There's no one in the podcasting space that's dedicated to doing that. Because it's all done in-house.
There's thousands of voiceover artists out there with all sorts of different cadences and voices and male and female that can be matched up with a particular show.
But why? But why the host? The success has been found in the host doing this.
Right. I mean, if the host can do it, great.
Right.
But it does get back to brand control too. So brands may want to identify certain voiceover artists to work with certain genres of shows. Yeah. Right.
Podcasters can be their own worst enemy sometimes when it comes to running ads.
Right. Well, a lot of podcasters aren't really very good at doing ads.
No, and I hope to help them.
Right. It's not like you're born with this ability to do a good
No, everyone's a born salesman. Come on now.
No. Wishful thinking entirely, yes.
Well, part of it also has to do with it's about being genuine too,
Right.
How let's be frank. What is that food service one that's all out there? The fresh, what is it called? Where you make a meal or something?
Yeah, Blue Apron, those kind of guys, right?
I could personally. I'm not against the company, but personally, I could never do that ad. Because they say, it's an experience. You open it up, you check the ingredients. You do this as a thing with your spouse or your girlfriend or your kids, and you make dinner in 30 minutes. I'm yelling at the top of my lungs, get in the shower. Do your homework.
You're not your target audience. I'm sorry.
No, most people are not. So for me to do that, I'd be like, yeah, you can. It just wouldn't come across right, But if you're into that, that's like, let's do this. It's lovey-dovey-dovey, then yeah, okay, it's a good thing. But not me.
No, I've never bought one of those, but I did bring one home one time back when I was working for Podcast One.
Yeah.
Because they, I think it was Blue Apron that sent us a bunch of free ones, right?
Right.
And they were just sitting around the office, and they were like saying,
"Aren't they supposed to be refrigerated?"
Well, yeah, that's exactly. We didn't have a refrigerator in the office, so somebody had to take one home. So
but I was approached the other day by a company that has a tech product. I'm like, oh, let me check it out. I'm looking at it. I'm like, yeah. Let me use this for a couple of weeks and I'll let you know if I'm, because if I'm going to promote it to my audience, I better be like, yeah, this is cool. And here's the reason why, So anyway, I think the ad space in the podcasting world is going to have some adjustments, and there's going to be winners and losers. And, But the long-term standing issues with the advertisers or with media buyers ignoring the 95 or 97 or 99%, I think that's a better way to say it. Ignoring the 99% something has to give.
Yeah, no, agreed. Yeah, there needs to be some improvement, I think is what it is. It's not like the podcast advertising space is broken or anything.
No.
It's more that it just needs to get better, and we need to tap into more podcasts because that's where the inventory is. If we're going to hit $1 billion,
we got to sell it all.
How the heck are we going to get there? How the heck are we going to get there with the
right? And maybe that's what in the back of people's mind they're worried about. I think though, for the average, we're sitting here talking about all this as if everyone wants advertising, and we know everyone doesn't.
That's true.
But it would be an interesting poll to take on someone that's been podcasting for, let's just say, 6 months or more, and have gotten kind of through the wow, now they're in the grind of building their show. We should it'd be nice to do a poll of someone that's been podcasting for 6 months and ask them how important is advertising to them if they have a podcast that will support it audience-wise. I wonder what that number would be.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a bigger question, though. How many people want to make money from their podcast?
Yeah.
And I think that's a question that hasn't been asked, right?
Yeah.
Whether they get it from donations, advertising, whatever, is that... I mean, I think we can probably say pretty confidently that a large percentage of podcasters would like to make money from their podcast,
I think
right?
So.
But the question gets back to is how.
Well, and not only how, but is there realistic expectations on what they're going to make?
Right.
If they're saying I've got 5,000 people listening to my show per episode, and I'm doing 4 episodes a month, and that's 20,000 downloads a month. Am I going to be satisfied with a $500 check from that? Or whatever that number may be. And it probably won't be 500 because after the split, after you do your revenue share with your partner, some are 50-50, some are 70-30. So, if it's 50-50, then that check becomes $250. And that's what people also, that's another little thing people forget is, hey, I've got an advertising deal for you that's $25 CPM, but if you're doing a 50-50 rev share, if they haven't said that that's the net to you, then more than likely, there's money coming out of that. So.
Right. So Todd, what are you hearing about Google Podcasts? I'm hearing kind of conflicting things. I heard last week that there was some rumor flying around that Google Podcasts had disappeared from Android Auto, which I thought was an interesting little piece of news. But yet I keep hearing that, Google's still, going to change the world when it comes to podcasting. But I don't know that I'm seeing that.
Crickets.
Yeah.
It's really been crickets over there for me. I haven't heard nothing. Of course, I haven't specifically reached out to any of those folks either.
Well, I know Zach is speaking at the RAIN Podcast Business Summit.
Yeah, we'll have somebody there for that. So
coming up on March 5th, and I can't be there because I'm going to be in Orlando. So, our team up in New York is going to be at that event. But yeah.
Yeah, if everything goes away, I think it should. My representative may need to wear a bulletproof vest to that event.
Okay, yeah. Well, Zach is keynoting that event. The guy that's the program manager for Google Podcasts, he's going to be there. I thought it was interesting. That's one of the few events that I've seen him attend.
We'll have to see what they have to say, or he has to say.
Yeah, why would they have removed Google Podcasts from Android Auto? I wonder.
I don't know. Are they reworking it?
I don't know.
Yeah,
it's not like they pulled out Google Play Podcasts.
I don't have Android Auto, so I can't tell you why it would not work. It just seems a little odd to me.
It does seem a little odd.
And was it associated with an update, or was this just somebody saying it's missing?
I guess it was a group of Reddit users off of Reddit.
That noticed it.
And then also, I think James Cridlin actually piped in about it too. But
well, if they've removed it, it's not a good sign.
No, it's not. Of course, I'm not sure how popular Android Auto is either. But.
Well, if you think about it, though, most people are just using their Bluetooth connected to their car anyway. Most folks don't, unless you've got a brand new vehicle. I know I don't change vehicles. I drive until the wheels fall off. So I got 213,000 out of my current one. So, last car I had went 367. So
yeah, I've got a car that has 200 on it. Yeah.
So but some people change cars like they change underwear. So, I just don't have a vehicle with all that modern, cool stuff in it. When I go to Michigan, I'll probably buy a vehicle that has one of those cool things in it.
Yeah. So there's one company that I thought was interesting that popped in the news a little bit. The Cadence 13 folks we don't talk about very often.
What's funny is those lists, how those lists are generated, right?
I don't know about this particular one, but it's probably a pay-to-play thing.
I would be shocked if it isn't. So, but maybe it isn't. I don't know. You get those, I get those solicitations all the time. Submit for this list. And I just delete. Submit for this list. So
it's only $499.
Right. Yeah. We have a special spotlight thing for you. We want to talk about your company. We'll bring in a filming crew the whole night. It's only $25,000. Right. So I don't know. I don't take a lot of stock. Congratulations to them for some good press, but where have they been? I haven't heard too much about them either.
Right.
Can you tell me what they're doing in the space right now?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a couple of studios, one in New York and one in LA, where they are working with content creators to produce programs. They're kind of like a Podcast One or something like that. They're kind of like a network.
But there's nothing that really explosively gets out there and is wow, so it's cool.
It's a group of former radio folks that are behind that.
And then there was a piece in Podcast Business Journal that talked about, are you ready to merge with radio? And come on. We're no. I just kind of, when I see that, I'm kind of like, all right, maybe some networks will get bought up by radio, but I don't think very many people are going to be merging with radio.
Well, I think if you look at the history, it's been radio networks buying podcast companies.
Right.
So I don't know that it's going the other way. I don't see podcasting companies acquiring radio networks.
No.
So, it's definitely a one directional thing.
Radio is just one big advertisement to me. And that's why I don't hardly listen to radio. But, some podcasts are just becoming one big advertisement too. So
was that article? Oh, was that the Kim Komando thing?
No, that was the Dan Granger Adweek.
Okay.
Says, and I don't know who wrote this. Oh, it's written by Podcast Business Journal. It's written by their team.
Oh, okay.
And Granger says, on the heels of the iHeart purchase of How Stuff Works, more radio companies will continue to take over podcast content companies and will result in radio starting to look and sound a little bit more like podcasting. And over time, podcasts are going to look and sound a lot more like radio. As a result, Granger writes, podcasting shouldn't necessarily be the highlight of a marketing strategy. Okay.
Wow.
And this is a guy that wrote this is from Adweek.
Right.
And so there's only so many content companies out there. So if you're in radio, you better get busy. If if you're going to start buying content companies, there's not that. There's only there's maybe 20. So hurry up.
Right. Well, it's the whole thing of, I think radio has wanted to, call podcasting its own for a long time. And to just make podcasting basically their next generation radio, I think. But that's not the reality, though. The reality is that podcasting is a unique medium of its, basically in of itself. It's not an offshoot really of radio. It's so different that, and that's why we're seeing what happened is radio is acquiring podcasting, because they want to pull what's unique about podcasting into their radio groups because they're having a hard time creating that.
Yeah. So what did you
internally, right?
Yeah. So what did you think of Rob Walsh's comments that the act by Spotify was a big nothing? He played it up as a big nothing on the feed.
Oh, you mean the acquisition of Anchor and Gimlet? Yeah, I think if you think about it, I think time will tell what happens with that. But like I keep saying, I don't think that acquisition was all about podcasting. So I think podcasting is just one of their strategies going forward to better compete against their competitors and grow larger. I think it was definitely a shot across the bow of Pandora.
Definitely.
So, I mean, you think about those guys and where they are in relation to what's happening with Spotify and Anchor and Gimlet. You can kind of see
they're light years behind.
Right. And you can kind of see where that acquisition was really a competitive play to differentiate themselves and to expand their subscription business, I think. So
I keep being asked by podcasters, what do you think about the Pandora agreement? And I have to respond, I know nothing about the Pandora agreement.
Right. What Pandora agreement?
Right. I say, I know nothing about it. Well, and then they on the slide, well, what do you know about, what do you think? Wink, wink, wink. I say, I know nothing about the Pandora agreement.
Well, there is quite a bit of truth to that statement. So, yeah, right.
So, yeah.
Right.
And, but it's, so as more podcasters get that, and somewhere at some point, someone's gonna, well, let's just put it this way. I know nothing. So I think what will happen over time is maybe Pandora's going to have to reassess what's happening in the space and how their approach to adding shows. Maybe they're going to have to speed it up a little bit.
I think some others, I think are either doing it or they are probably considering doing it. I thought it was interesting that there was a link shared around over the last couple of days. I'm sure you saw it, Todd, that Apple now has a web player.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting.
Mm-hmm. And there's another player that's getting into the podcasting space that wants podcasting on their platform that is seeing gold in their hills, and that's radio.com. They're looking
I didn't sign any NDA with those guys. So.
Yeah, me neither.
So, and who radio.com is, if you don't know, is basically it's owned and run by the second largest radio group behind iHeart.
Yeah.
So the Intercom.
The Intercom folks. Yeah.
Yep.
So they're looking to add shows in a big way to their platform, and
right.
So just be a good another distribution point for podcasters.
Right. And they're talking with everybody.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Right. Talking with us,
Yep.
all of the suppliers of the content, right?
But it's there's could be some potential there, some good potential for podcasters too. So I think that they're bringing unique offering to the table that right out of the gate, I think some podcasters will look favorably upon. So we'll see what happens with we're still talking with their team and trying to figure out the logistics. Right. I'm not, well, I would rather see podcasters submit themselves over there by them, independently, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. The other group that's yet to kind of make a play here is the Cumulus folks. So we'll see. They're the third largest.
Yeah.
So we'll see if the Cumulus, but Cumulus does own Westwood One, which has had a pretty strong podcasting, area. Right. It's kind of a separate division of the company, but they've had a pretty strong play. They've been sponsoring it. Podcast movement and stuff like that.
Yeah, they're most of their stuff they're doing in podcasting's out of the West Coast, and
down in Los Angeles.
Yeah, so they've got some new people on their team, and we'll see what happens with that group. I would expect some movement there as well.
Yeah.
So it's radio is looking at this. So maybe that article's right. Maybe it's the merging, but I think. I'm hoping what will happen is that podcasters will start getting picked up for syndication on radio while radio's still alive, which is going to be for a considerable amount of time.
Yeah.
And if that happens, if we have some stars born into radio, that would be fantastic. I think that would be, would be good. But how do they keep how do you stay to 13-minute segments as a podcaster? That's challenging.
Right.
And breaking for commercials and...
It's a different format, but I guess as we move more towards this kind of dynamic ad insertion type of advertising model, we are kind of heading back to a little bit closer to a radio model. I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's definitely not going to be as restrictive as radio. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, it depends on if it's delivered over the airways, that format's going to continue.
Right.
They got to pay the transmitter. They actually have a transmitter they got to pay for.
And who knows? Radio might benefit from taking on some of the personalized aspects of podcasting and move away from this scream in your ear kind of advertising and content that they do.
Well, if you look at radio is really broke down in the way I look at it, two segments: music and talk. And the talk is heavily dominated by the Rush, Hannity, all those types, and they're on 3 hours a day. 3 hours. So you got Rush on for 3 hours. You got Hannity on for 3 hours. You've got all these radio talking heads that are taking up huge segments of time, 5 days a week.
Right.
And to do 3 hours, Rob, my God. Can you imagine having to do 3 hours of radio every day? You need a team. You can't do that on your own.
Right. And most podcasters can't do that.
Well, they have to be paid,
Right. And they just don't have the ability to do it either.
Right.
These are very specialized skills that these guys have.
So
to be able to do this.
So podcasters don't fit cleanly into the traditional talk radio space.
No, not at all.
So how do you shoehorn them in? If you do it all, our suggestion to radio stations from the get-go has been you put them as supplemental content on your website.
Right.
Yeah.
But I do think that, the audiences for those shows, Todd, are older audiences. They're, it's the same thing that's happening on NPR. A lot of that radio distribution that they have is literally dying off.
Well, according to radio, that's not the case. They'll never say that. Oh, we're getting new listeners every day. That's the story they're telling.
If they're going to do that, they're going to have to adopt more talent that comes out of places like podcasting, right? Because that's the future of content. It's not the Sean Hannitys of the world. That's not the future of audio talk content.
We already know the millennials are not listening to radio.
Right. And that's my entire point is that and they're not listening to Sean Hannity.
No.
On the radio, it's a generational shift that's happening here.
I'd be curious to see.
It'd be taking a long time.
I'd like to see some data on that. That'd be cool. That'd be cool to see some data on that. What do they think that their audience is getting older?
Right.
My mom, she semi-retired from her. Well, she's a produce broker, and had a basically very dynamic business. Delivery was involved, and she stepped away from that at the end of this year. And my sister owns some laundromats, and they do wash fold. So my sister asked my mom to, my mom just sitting around the house and bored, and she's still very active and social, and it's unhealthy to not be social and inactive. So my sister asked her if she wanted to work at the laundromat, and they've got a TV in there, and we don't watch, as a family, we don't watch a lot of regular TV, but my mom had put on one of the news channels, and she said to me on the phone the other day, she says, I had to turn that shit off.
Right.
She said, didn't matter what channel. She said, I felt myself getting angry every day, because it was again and again and again, the same stuff, an unhealthy dialogue of this blast of vitriol that was coming across. And she said I couldn't handle it. She said I put on the cooking channel or something else. So I think what we have today is podcasting is if you're duplicating some of those news events and bringing that type of stuff into your show, I think it's a bad thing for podcasts. So for me, podcasts are like this
breath of fresh air.
Yeah, I don't have to listen to this talking head who is, reporters are not reporters no more. They're just a bunch of biased assholes. And so every one of them, every channel, doesn't matter who you listen to, they all have their agendas, and it's just an entertainment show. It's not news. So when I listen to podcast, and I'm hearing, I listen to a lot of shows, and I'm hearing, great commentary, and not about good things and good ideas and how to help yourself and how to grow your business and how to be a better person and all this stuff. It's like, and it's almost like, and she
safe. That's what it is.
Yeah, and she actually said to me, she says, if I had to listen, she said, some people ask for me to put the news on, and I will while they're there, and I'll turn it off. I'll switch it off. She said, but if I had to listen to that every day, she said, I'd need a shrink within a month. So I think from the point of view, from a podcasting content standpoint, I think we have to remember that this is what makes podcasting content so incredible.
Right.
We can escape the crap that's being shoved down our throats day in and day out.
Right.
By an agendized media right and left, and actually be able to get some fresh air.
Right. And talk about other topics, because it can be completely all encompassing.
Needless to say, don't subscribe to any political podcast.
Well, there's some good ones out there too that can help people, look at things more rationally. But
depends. Again, everyone has
depends on what side of your fence.
Podcasters have. We're allowed to have agendas. All right, we're not in this constraint. Of course, reporters are no longer really reporters, so I guess maybe they just do what they want to do. They're more like podcasters today than they are like news reporters, so, but I'm just thankful that there's a medium that I can get into, escape to, where I'm not being radicalized. I guess is the better word for it, right? And so I think podcasting, as we start selling it, is a healthy space to listen and get educated and get information. And as a podcaster, though, I think too, you have to be, and I try to be real careful on my tech show to be an equal opportunity basher. Because if you let your political preferences show through, you're going to lose half your audiences. So you have to be able to, if you're talking about something that has a political overture, you have to be willing to bash both ways. And I think on the tech side, I'm pretty safe. I don't have to run into too many political content. But there's stuff that comes up the FCC or FAA that I talk about, and so I don't know. It's just I think podcasts are a breath of fresh air.
Right. And I think it's a lot of the reason why we're seeing more young people gravitate towards the medium, is that it isn't that kind of, it's less the partisan type of topics, where it's more open to a lot of other types of topics that the younger generation would rather talk about. So, yeah.
So I don't know. I think that we've run pretty full circle here on this, but I think there's change in the space, and everyone say we're at another inflection point. We're in the golden age of podcasting, which I have to laugh because we've heard that 4 or 5 times already over the past 14 years.
Right.
But it does feel like things are speeding up to me.
Yeah, well, what does that really mean? I mean, change is happening. This is the topic that I brought up for our panel session at Podfest, is talking about are we facing crazy change in the podcasting space?
Well, I think from a content creator space, no.
Right.
I think we're still, we're watching the numbers of new people coming into the space and watching the growth. And I have to just pause here for a second. I got a beautiful red bird outside my window. I have no idea what. It's beautiful. I should take a picture. I think that we have, for independent content creators, there's still the opportunity to build a great show and have your voice be heard and build authority and make a difference in the world. So I think that's in the price of entry is almost nothing.
Right.
I think what we have to be careful of, we have to continue to watch, is make sure that, those of us down the trenches here are reminded every day where our bread is buttered, and making sure we're taking care of the content creators. And then the business aspect of this thing will work itself out.
Well, I think we also have to be careful too of over commercialization of this medium too. And I think that there's definitely a lot of pressure being put on big money interests that are pushing that agenda. And what I fear is that we're going to go down that rabbit hole, potentially, at least some aspects of the industry, a little too far. But I don't, finding that balance is difficult, because there's a lot of people that are investing a lot of time and energy and building companies, and I want to see those companies succeed.
Yep.
But yet, on the other hand, I also want to keep the culture and the fabric of what made podcasting what it is, a open playing field for new ideas and content, and which is what it's always been for 15 years. And I would sad to see it change to be more like radio.
Rick is saying in the chat room, podcasts are a refuge from the depressing cacophony of the mainstream. The mainstream media is actually driving their audience to podcasts. And he says, we are always facing change in the podcast space. It's constantly evolving. I know, but if you look at the core.
Right, it hasn't changed that much.
I sit down at 8:00 in the evening and record my show and do my show notes and publish my show out and send my newsletter and make sure my sponsor stays happy. And it's ops normal here, And happy to do it. And when on the business side, though, I definitely have got my antennas up on more things to watch. And, what do I what is it in business? Business is one thing, survive, right? Survive and expand, Right. And so I'm looking at the space. I'm like, am I screwed in 3 years? Are we going to start losing market share? And so far, I'm still good. We're not seeing any depression of numbers or subscriptions or people leaving us for other platforms. But it's something that, in the back of my mind, I'm like, what's the play And
Right.
from a business standpoint, I'm definitely more aware of what's going on. But that's good because guess what it does? It keeps us on our toes.
Right. I don't think things are going to change that much. I am a little worried about over commercialization. I think is a threat and an opportunity at the same time. And I think we just have to be careful of how we proceed. A lot of people in the space don't realize that most of the life of this medium has been in passionate pursuit of non-commercialization.
Right.
So, and I'm not sure that everybody understands that. And I think it helps to realize that when you're doing things, because then it puts you in the proper mindset of looking at this medium and understanding why it's grown so slowly.
Yeah.
And on the monetization side, right? And for us to force that to grow faster could cause consequences that we all, or many of us, don't want. So, yeah, I don't know what you think on that.
Well, I just think that for the podcasters that are listening, and I'm hoping you'll help with this message, is we need to have realistic expectations of what is going to happen in the space and what's going to happen and how it affects your show. You know, everyone's worried. We're all a bunch of A-type personalities, right, for the most part, that are in this space. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think there's very few that are not. And because we love our content, we love our shows. Maybe we're not completely A-types, but I think we're close. Yeah. And then, right. But I think as content creators, we're worried, number one, about building our audience, getting our message out, promoting. You know, as a core, that's what we're worried about as content creators. The money part, yeah, we think about it, and we hope that we can monetize and pay some bills with it. But what I see coming into this space right now is we have a lot of folks with unrealistic expectations of that they're going to be able to instantly monetize, and they almost like to get the cart before the horse. So I'm hoping as a community, and maybe this is just Todd's philosophy, I think the thing is, right, you focus on the content. Focus on the content. Create great content. Put good stuff out there. It's going to make people go, whoa, listen to this show. That's what you want someone to do. You want an audience member to say, wow, it blew me away. Hey, Tom or Jane or Sue, or go listen to this show. You know, that's what we want our listeners to do.
Right.
And if we do that, the advertisers will come.
Right.
So we have to set the expectations of new people in the space. And I hate to say, I don't want to use the word put in your dues. You know, you got to put in your time. Some people have a knack to grow a big show immediately. And those, you know, we're all jealous of those types of folks that do that. So
yeah,
I think we just have to focus on keeping the expectations in check with the community, which maybe leads to another discussion point.
Yeah. Well, it's all about adding value to the world and your listeners. I think at the core of this, I would hate for us to focus too much on commercialization and lose the focus on audiences and what their needs are and why people actually connect with this medium.
Right.
I
find myself now, and actually, it's caused me a bit of stress, and I don't like stress, but I spend, I would say 50% of the time I'm online trying to quell or provide different input on people's decision-making process and things they're doing with their shows. Because everyone has an agenda, okay? I'm a business owner. I have an agenda. I want you to host with me. Right. But at the same time, I'm also worried about what podcasters are doing with their shows when they get started and how they start. And, you know, and the main thing I'm trying to get at is I want new podcasters to be able to think a little bit before they jump down a certain path on how they're going to do their show, promote their show, etc. And I just find myself doing a lot of, I don't want to call it damage. It's not damage control. Yeah, it is. It's podcasting damage control. It's not business. It's not my business. It's just podcast 101 general damage control.
It's setting expectations and setting, trying to correct people's maybe out of alignment kind of thinking around this medium. I see you do that a lot on Facebook groups, and I know Rob Walsh does it too. He's constantly trying to reset people in their perceptions because they get told misinformation.
And it's not always, yeah, sure. Sometimes so, what hosting company should I host with? And of course, everyone piles in, and but I just want people to think a little bit. What are your goals of your show? What's have you thought beyond next week? Have you thought 2 years down the road? It's exciting. We're going to do a show. Okay, what is my goal? And if it's to hang out with your girlfriends and have a little weekly, let's hang out with the girls and talk. Cool. It is what it is. But if your goal is to build your business, or if it's to build your brand, or if it's to build you as an authority in a space, there's a different approach and a different tack you should take. And so for me, it's like, yeah, there's definitely an agenda, because we all have agendas. And we all have to remember that when we're reading anything in Facebook, even from me. But at the same time, we're trying not to let those agendas come in there and trying to give some guidance.
Right.
And you hate to be the one that's out there kind of nagging, because then you come across as the old curmudgeon.
Yeah, right. Not that that's been an issue for you, Todd.
No, but but there's it. I said something about it the other day to my team. I'm like, there is so much bad information being put out, so much, and it's not because people are doing it on purpose. They just don't know. They just don't know.
Or it's the sharing of incorrect information that just kind of goes from person to person.
Right.
Yeah. And it's at the end of the day, that's how people learn, right?
Yeah.
And the problem is, it's not a problem, but there's a lot of new people that are in the medium that just, like you said, they just don't know any better because they don't have the historical reference, or they haven't talked to somebody that's had a show for 10 years or 5 years or whatever. They're talking to people that had shows for the last, 2 months.
But Rob, they don't care. So the approach you have to take is one of trying to show there is a bigger picture here.
Right.
Think about the and I think if everyone, and there's no way you can save everybody, but I see things being said sometimes, and people jumping on the bandwagon. You're like, they're too far gone. There's nothing I can do.
Right.
And maybe they'll come back. You just drop a tip here or there, but it does become, well, what it really ends up being is, for me, a distraction, because I'm having to deal a lot with this. And I know Rob does, and I don't know how much you're in there from time to time too.
Right.
And there's a number of folks that are in there trying to, do these course corrections, and
right.
And we're not necessarily not open to new ideas, because believe me, I'm always looking for new ideas. I love to steal stuff all the time. For my personal show, whatever, it's, what is it? They say that copying is the biggest form of flattery.
Right.
So open to new stuff, but wow, it just sometimes it's just like, it's really frustrating.
So Todd, I saw this article that came out called "The Golden Age of Podcasts."
Yeah, I saw that.
You saw that one,
right?
And it's talking about a content explosion in the medium, and I guess Chartable, which is a company that's trying to aggregate podcast data, and there's some issues with what they're doing, but we don't have to talk too much about that. But they're saying in here in 2018, we had an average of 575 new podcasts started every day. Seems a little high to me.
That's high.
Right. And then Chartable's tracking 670,000 podcasts in Apple Podcasts, and over 210,000 of those were published or published their first episode in 2018.
Well, they didn't say how many of those didn't publish more than 1 or 2 episodes in 2018.
Right. Yeah, that's true. So I thought those were some interesting stats that came out of this.
Yeah, sadly, Chartable had an outage. Apparently, they lost some data. That's just the worst nightmare for any company. You know, that believe it or not, that's always in the back of my mind, because I'm like, have we put in enough reserve or enough?
Yeah.
Because you're just like, podcasters will forgive you for a lot, but if you lose data,
yeah,
especially if someone is billing on your data, and you lose data, oh man.
Yeah. Yeah, and those guys were pushing the envelope a little bit about what they were doing, trying to aggregate podcast metrics, like they are, and I believe maybe they upset a big player in the space.
Oh, yeah, they did.
And I did notice that they were doing something that I was like, raised my eyebrows a little bit, where they were asking for Apple IDs.
Big no.
Off of their website. So I'm sure Apple wasn't too happy about that.
Well, I think that was the reason for the "you shall not"
right
piece in their terms of service. So, right. And I don't know, what is their? Do they actually charge for that service?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they have a premium package and maybe a free package. I'm not sure. It's probably something like that, be my guess.
Yeah. Well, and I understand what they're trying to do, but
it's a noble effort, I have to say. I mean, it'd be great if we all had one place to go to get all the metrics. Though I think we have that to some degree right now with all of our platforms. It's not like that's broken by any stretch of the imagination. And I'm not really sure. I was just on Apple's Podcast Connect area just yesterday, and there's some interesting data over there, but it's not really I don't think it's worth that much.
No, I think the slide that tells me the most over there, or the page that tells me the most, is how long people listen.
Right, that and where they drop off and when they start listening again or whatever.
That's about the most valuable piece. And what it really did was confirm information I kind of already knew. So,
right,
it just validated something that we had gotten oh my God, I can't even talk this morning. Anyway, a way I had figured it out through other means.
Right.
Jeez.
Well, don't you guys track how people are listening and when they're listening and things like that?
We track percentage. You got to be very careful. We track, and this is something that's coming to our hosting customers very, very soon as a premium package. Is we give them the partial download information.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So it's download data. So we can tell them, okay, 1,000 of these downloads were delivered at 35%, and 1,500 of them were at 56% or 70%. And there's blocks. Right. And
because those can be reasonably linked up to click play experiences on the download, right?
Reasonably, yes. I would, and again, I caution our customers. I always tell them information is good for, number one, for making decisions on programming,
right?
Because it's a small segment. Because the people that are subscribed, it downloads.
Right, exactly. I mean, those are usually the completed download numbers, right?
And then the partials are people that, sometimes when people actively press play, we get the whole thing. It's only a segment of the plays that that are partial, and they come from certain players that don't download the whole file immediately. So it's a window into user or listener activities, and it really is pretty valuable because if we have let's just use a number, 10,000 completed downloads, and then I had 4,000 that got beyond the 25% mark. Well, I can count those for advertising.
Right.
Or if the ad was at the 75% mark, well, I can leave those out. I can exclude those from billing.
Right.
Because it gives it didn't ever get there.
And I would say it's maybe a little bit more reasonable to project that partial downloads is an indicator of what it was actually listened to, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, if you think about the click play experience, that would be what that would be, right?
It would be. So for example, one of our clients, I've told this before, they saw a show that the subscriptions were 100%, but whatever percentage of download data we had from a specific player or app, we said they kept seeing 45 minutes. People were, or not 45 minutes, 75% of the download in a 1 hour program. Okay, so let me be very careful here. 75% of the download, they saw a drop off at 75% mark. It was a 1 hour show. They went into the show. They figured out that they had a segment at about the 45-minute mark that might need to be repositioned, and they removed it, and their percentage of download increased.
What was it? Was it a change in the audio quality?
No, it was a special segment that they were running in the middle or at the 3/4 mark that apparently pissed people off or turned them off, and they punched out.
Okay.
Yeah, so they made a programming change, and then it increased their listen rate to the end. So that's just one example.
Right.
But again, that we caution people to again, it's not percentage listened, it's percentage downloaded.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was interesting in this this golden age of podcasts too. It had a paragraph in here talking about, it had in the title, it said Spotify and Google get serious. Okay, I don't know if you remember that part, and then it had the actual podcast player chart that was supplied by Libsyn, and Google wasn't listed anywhere in it.
Well, Google to us is much higher than 1%.
Right.
But we've also been on a 5.
That's not saying very much, Todd.
Well, no, I'm not going to say how much the percentage is, but I know we have a distinct. All right, I'm just going to say we have a competitive advantage. We're driving. Our listeners are getting more market share to Google and Android customers than anybody.
It's because your relationship with WordPress, right?
No, it's because we've been pushing Android and Google subscriptions for 5 years.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And it's default. People get it by default. By far, our listeners have more Android listeners than anyone else.
But I'm talking about Google Podcasts.
Okay, and they're included because we've made it default that Google Podcast is a click on their page. Every customer has a Google Podcast click.
Yeah, but what I'm saying in this market share chart, Google isn't listed anywhere.
Well, on his chart.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I agree with that. But I'm just saying that we started talking about how, there's people out there still saying how Google is serious about podcasts, but we're not really seeing an impact.
Okay,
right?
But Rob, the hosting providers have to provide a mechanism for their listeners.
Which we do. Okay. I mean, I'm speaking for us.
Right, have to provide a mechanism to make it easier for the listeners to be able to find this stuff on Google Podcasts.
Right.
If you don't, no one's going to find it. They're not going to know.
Well, Todd, let's talk about Google Podcasts for a second, because maybe I've been thinking about this. I mean, what are the 3 things that Google Podcasts can do to to actually have an impact.
Oh, it's easy. Number one thing, they have to have a dedicated app.
Right. Dedicated
Boom.
app.
That's it. Done.
They need to have a form on their website
Right.
that a podcaster can submit their
Yep.
RSS feed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And can you think of a third thing that they can do? I'm sure you can.
Have a directory.
And have a little podcast category in the search bar.
Have
above
an Apple
their
Podcast,
search.
iTunes copycat.
Right.
Done.
Exactly.
Done deal.
Oh, and also have it somehow available on iOS.
But the problem is, Google.
It's simple. It's simple.
No,
guys.
it's not simple.
Well, it should be for a company like Google that has the resources they have.
Okay.
It should be simple.
It's simple for their Nexus phones or anything they directly control the actual user experience. But if you know anything about OEMs, for example, if Google wants a podcast app delivered on the next version of Android on the Samsung Galaxy S10, that has to be pre-negotiated and fought tooth and nail to have that app delivered to Samsung.
Right. Pre-installed wasn't one of the criteria that I mentioned for Google success.
Pre-installed has to be one of the criteria. They have to negotiate it out and say, listen, you want Gmail, you want Google Search, you want Safari.
I agree it'd be great. I agree it'd be great to have that, right?
But
you're right. It's such a fragmented operating system platform that you're not. It's you can't really say that that's going to work across all Android phones.
And the Samsung folks are going to say, well, you want one more in your app? Well, you're going to have to give us some points.
Well, it's taking up storage space on those devices too, right?
You know, let's adjust the licensing fee that we're paying you. That's the problem.
Right.
But if they had an app, number one, first of all, if they had a dedicated true app and not a HTML rendered app,
right. Yeah, right.
But I don't work at Google and I can't tell them what to do.
Right.
If I could, that would be the four things we would tell them to do.
I have been giving them suggestions on this. And I know Rob Walsh has too, but it's just, they're going to do what they're going to do, I guess. Right.
Well, if they're behind, if they think that they are making an impact, they are behind.
Google Play podcast needs to get shut down.
Oh, it just needs to go away completely.
Yeah. Google, if you're listening to this,
just delete that thing. DEL star.
And just realize most podcasters are using iOS devices. Take that to heart.
Well, here was an observation from Australia.
Right.
So I was in Central Business District. So we were definitely not we were still in the tourist zone. Everything's it's close. And I started noticing lots of Windows machines. Windows. Where's the Macs? So I started counting. Every time I saw someone with a laptop in the lounge or somewhere, I got up to 230 Windows machines before I saw my first Mac in Australia's Central Business District. I'm like,
Mac is not that popular outside of the U.S.
Well, according to all my Australian friends that I posted on Facebook about Mac is huge in Australia. And I'm like, I did not see it. But I did. Then I was doing another look. I was like, okay, what kind of phone do you have? And I'm, in the elevator, I'm looking sideways at people, and lots of Androids, but a fair share of iPhones too, of course.
Right. Sure.
So I'd love to see a country breakdown on device utilization. There's got to be one of those around here. There's got to be one somewhere. Every country's got to have one, but I made it a point to kind of think about that a little bit. But,
Windows still huge, especially in the business world too.
But in the United States, Android is huge too. It's huge. It's huge.
I mean, iOS has a larger chunk in the U.S. than other parts of the world.
Yeah, but a larger chunk than other parts of the world. I agree.
Right.
Just from a cost perspective, because you get in some countries you can't because of the dollar. $1 was $1.40 in Australia, so that takes $1,000 iPhone and pushes the price to $1,400 AUD. Yeah, so
a lot of people can't afford that.
Right. It goes out of their price point. And when they can pick up a, brand new Android for, $600.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting time. But yeah, I just think it's our own fault Google Podcast did not make it super easy, but we're still seeing an increase in, I think the Android apps per se are making more gains than Google Podcast is.
Right. Which makes sense to me, given how Google Podcasts was deployed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's an actual app,
Right.
Not
it's fairly simple and straightforward.
The app that Google put together is cool, but it's not one click. You got to do 2 or 3 clicks to get it on your, whatever you call your desk, your face,
your screen,
screen. Yep.
Right.
Yeah. And it sits there, looks like an app, but it's not an app. So
seems like an app. Smells like an app,
but it's not really an app.
Not really an app.
Right. Well, we've been all over the map today.
Yes, we have.
My God. Well. So, what do you guys think? There's Kevin. Hey. Oh, Kevin Hooley's a friend of mine from where I grew up in Quincy. Soon to be back, Kevin. Rick says, Chartable, 100% free, no commitment or credit card required. Rick says,
there's a business model for you.
Well, they got to have some business model because, like they said in their email about the lost data, that they ran out of servers or server data space or something. So
it's called venture capital.
Does Chartable have venture capital?
I don't know for sure. I'm just guessing. The money has to come from somewhere if they're not charging for something.
I got an email from a company, and then it was a venture capital firm, and they said, "Hey, we'd love to talk to you. We've invested in this and this and this." And I replied back, I said, "Being that you have invested in this and that, I don't want to talk to you."
I'm getting those emails too, Todd.
If you were stupid enough to invest in those 2 things, I don't want to talk. Actually, I should talk to them because then it would be almost free money. If they were dumb enough to invest in that, then I guess I'm a shoo-in. But that is the email I sent back. So.
Oh, okay. You probably didn't hear back from them. Right. Yeah.
Actually, I wasn't that rude, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do.
You look at some stuff and you're like, why? Really?
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, those kind of dollar signs, I'm talking about, the Gimlet and Anchor deal, I think has spiked interest from all sorts of investors out there.
A lot.
Right.
And I get the email and I'm immediately like, we're late, like a round 5 investor. And I'm like, okay, before we even talk, here are my criteria, and that kind of weeds them out too. So,
yeah,
because you can waste a lot of time talking to those folks and then end up having nothing.
Right.
That's true. Go through NDAs and go through, this, you spend weeks talking to people and then they were just fishing, so. But there's definitely a lot of people, we'll see. We'll see if there's more deals being made. But with $500 million being spent by Spotify, that has definitely got people's attention.
Yeah.
And if they paid $125 million for Anchor, that makes Libsyn worth about maybe $3 billion. And I'm serious. I'm really. If you look at the market value, that drives Libsyn to $2 to $3 billion. I figure that probably pushes my valuation to 500. So Rob, you guys are probably the same. It's just if with that kind of crazy money being spent,
right?
And for what they got. So how much do you think it would cost to do the Spotify app? $1 million to build their app?
Oh, for
not
mobile?
Spotify, Anchor. How much do you think it would cost to reproduce Anchor's app? $1 million?
Yeah, probably.
Probably
Probably in that
million.
range.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, wink, wink, wink. It's only a million to catch up.
Well, I mean, you've got a lot of staffing costs too that probably elevate that number quite a bit.
Well, they
I
got
mean, if you're
100.
talking about the whole platform.
Yeah, they got 100
then-
people. What do they use 100 people for? I look at what I'm running my operation on. I'm like, what would I do with 100 people?
Right.
You know?
Well, yeah.
But I also didn't
I
have
can
20.
speculate on that, but it may not be good.
But I didn't have $20 million of venture capital to burn either. I had, Todd's back pocket wallet to figure it out.
Right. That's true. You're trying to operate off of revenues. So
We are operating off revenues.
Yeah. Right. Right.
That's how real businesses work on revenue from business. So,
yeah,
as you guys do too. So,
right.
All right. Well, everyone, we're inside baseball stuff here too much. So, thanks for being here, and we will not be back next Saturday. I'm sorry, that's my fault again. But you have to please understand things are hot right now in the space, and so we're lots of things in the wheelhouse. Watch the news next week. My reference to Jeff wearing a bulletproof vest. So that should be an interesting week. I think I get an interesting week ahead of me.
Yep.
And everyone, thanks for being here. And if you have information you'd like to share with us, Todd at blueberry.com. At Geek News is my Twitter account. Rob?
Send it to Rob at Spreaker.com or Rob at RobGreenlee.com, whichever you want to use. And it can be found on Twitter at Rob Greenlee as well. So.
And we're glad to be back with you. And if any of you want to help us do video at Podfest, let us know. We're always looking for volunteers if they want to help us stream their session. That would be fantastic. If anyone's going to
pull their phone out and do a Facebook Live or
something to that effect. Yeah, or have a Mevo or something like that they could bring along with them and hook you up with the stream information. I think that would be cool to be able to do a live event from Podfest. But everyone, thanks for being here. And again, we'll see you 2 weeks from today, same time. Most likely only audio at newmediashow.com/live. Everyone, take care.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. We're still live.